Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that must mean it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. We're starting, of course, the normal 5 minutes late because of Tom. That's right. It's all Tom's fault. No one else's. It's just Tom. How you doing, Tom?
Hi, friends. Hey, it was my date night tonight, so shut your mouth.
Well, that's just poor scheduling on your part, is what that tells me. I don't like. There are 6 other days in the week. Find a different one. That's what I would tell you.
You don't know my schedule, my friend. That's what I would say.
I do know that it's about summertime for you, brother. That's what I know. Okay, so I don't want to hear the excuses. At any rate, also joining us, it's Mr. Paul Conti. Hey, Paul, glad to have you back, sir. How you doing?
I am doing fantastic. Shout out to all the nerds out there. Hope you are all doing well.
Absolutely. I already see a lot of chatter in the comments. Lots of people rightly blaming Tom for us being a few minutes late. So much love.
Yes.
Exactly.
I hate everybody.
So tonight we're going to talk about Khorne Bloodbound, because obviously, Paul, you've been sucked in. The Blood God has pulled you to his side. You're ready to add some skulls to the throne of Khorne.
Which is your fault, by the way. We'll get into that later, but it's your fault.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that I'm bringing people over to the side of the dark gods. Excellent. Wonderful. All right. So, Tom, would you like to kick us off with some news, sir?
Not really.
All right. Would you do it anyways, since it's like your one job on this show?
Nothing. Nothing happened this week. Nothing.
Great update, Tom. Keep us in the loop.
No. So Skirmish is dropping this weekend. We got some more information about that. It was interesting. Obviously, the reviews are all out. One of those reviews is going to be my pick of the week, and I think that people are going to be surprised by this book. Some of the pages were leaked, obviously, and like I went through and counted like non-compendium units. Like, let me preface with this. So non-compendium units that were deemed like not to be included in this book,
right?
Like there are a significant number. Now these would include like the metals. These would include like older plastic kits that they just for some reason didn't add, like the flagellants. And it also includes old plastic kits, metals, and fine cast. By the way, I'm not even counting monsters, behemoths, anything like that. There's over 90 kits that they didn't include.
It's crazy. It's like, crazy that there's that many kits that they could have included, and they did not include in the list. Like vampire lords are off the table. There's no vampire lord for Skirmish. Now the good news is this: the equation is very easily derived. And it's the number of models divided by your starting unit size divided again by 5. That is the renowned calculation. In other words, if you have a hero who's 100 points, he's 20 because it's just one guy, hence divided by 5. If you get 10 guys for 100 points, they're 10 points each divided by 5, 2 points each.
They're 2 points per model. Yeah, and like that is mathematically significant, like regular across all the point values that we've seen. There are some variants, which is really fascinating. So, for example, if you back calculate Kurnoth Hunters, their unit costs go up to 220.
Which, I mean, so the question is that just them recognizing their power individually in Skirmish, which is possible, because when you look at some of those units, there are things where it's just like a Kurnoth Hunter is a very extremely powerful unit in Skirmish between its ranged ability and its defensiveness and stuff like that. Like, that's a hard thing to move in a Skirmish game, right? They're hard to move normally.
Sure.
Or is this representative of their GHB2 points?
This is so representative of the GHB2.
Right.
Well, let's be honest.
What's your vote? Is this representative of the GHB2 points or just a one-off?
I'd say you could flip a coin. It could be either one. I would not see here's the thing. I wouldn't put it past them to just be using GHB2 points. But that is rather optimistic that they have all of those points done already.
They do. They do. It's done.
And I think it's also at the same time a little optimistic that they would be adjusting points that much for a skirmish side game.
What do you mean adjust? Like if they have a master document, they've already made the decision that they're going to change the units to 220 when they go to release skirmish.
No, he's saying the opposite. He's saying in favor of it being the GHB 2 points. It's optimistic that they would do that much fine-tuned balance work on the skirmish points, is what you're saying with that second point, right, Paul?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't think they were trying that hard.
Sure. So there's a strike in both directions, is Paul's point, right? I've got to come down on the side that it is the GHB 2 points. And the reason I think that is because at this point in time, if the book has a, let's say, early-ish July release, which is what I think it's going
probably
to be.
mid-July.
Yeah, sure. Let's say whatever. July-ish release. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. If that's accurate, which it probably will be, because as Paul, as you pointed out, as we were chatting before the show, that would put it basically a year out on the nose from GHB 1, right?
Yeah.
And so if that's the case, it is done. It's locked. It's actually like it went to the printers because to spin that many thousands of copies and then put them in boxes and ship them is going to takes an X amount of time, and then to distribute them to stores and stuff. So when you trace that timeline back, it's at the printers right now. So
fair enough.
Yeah. In fact, those books exist and are sitting in boxes or something right now, technically, like the first run of them. Counting backwards for that kind of scale, you'd have to be right about there. But yeah, I've got to put it down that especially when you look at what units they touched, you mentioned Kurnoth Hunters, but there was a couple others like that were like the ones that they touched seemed to me to be the ones that I would have guessed had points adjustments coming.
Sure.
In GHB 2, right? And things like Hunters, they're getting more expensive.
We haven't seen Skyfires, by the way. Let me point that out. That was one of the blacked out costs, but I suspect that they're going to be adjusted as well.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, I think they kind of have to be. I faced down those for the first time over this past weekend. I'm like, whatever the points amount on those are,
not enough.
I don't care what the number is. It's low.
Yeah, I faced down a 18 in the final game at Adepticon, so I understand. Caleb, who won Best of, it was gross. Ugh.
I don't understand. I just play them all the time. I don't get what the problem is.
You're like, I just put them down, and I move them around and kill things.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a problem to me. I don't know what everybody's complaining about.
Vince. Hopefully at NashCon you'll experience it firsthand. As somebody pushes 18 across the table at you, or 27. Yeah. Okay. So what else? We had a new rumor engine drop today. It's a wheel.
It is a wheel. Yes. We'll take a look here. There you go. It's actually kind of harder to tell in this big blown up picture because it actually kind of gets too big. I got to lean back. If you look at just the normal picture, right here, this is a tire. Yeah, you can see the bolts on the rim. They can see the whatever these things are called, ridges on the tire, tread. That's what it's called. There you go. Has a name. So it's a big vehicle. Cool. Okay.
Yep.
Neat.
Yep.
I'm going to be optimistic and say I just hope it's something Age of Sigmar, fun, steampunk. No, it's 40K.
No, it's 40K.
It's a big 40K vehicle, but that's all right. It looks, I will say, with a tire like that and looking that rough, it's not going to be. Yeah, it could be Orky. There's been a lot of play that maybe it's an Orky vehicle. Orcs like spikes on their tires. That's a common thing. But it could also be, it could also be something completely different. Well, my point being, we're still expecting
new races.
Yeah, new races for 40K as well. We know it within this year, there's a couple other races in the pipe. I don't know what that looks like as far as they could go literally any direction with a new race in 40K.
Sisters of Battle is one of those.
Yeah, one would hope. I don't know if that actually classifies as new or not, but I'm okay with if they were willing to count the Primaris or Primaris or however you say their name, the true scale Space Marines as a new army, then I'm down with that. I would take my Sisters of Battle. So, yeah. I don't picture the Sisters of Battle driving around in big monster trucks, but maybe the sisters have fallen on hard times and are going a different direction with their army.
I mean, maybe they're just really well prepared for winter.
It's a good point. Exactly. They strapped on the all-weather radials on those chimeras. They're ready to rock and roll. Yeah, it's a good point. Good call. Tank treads nothing. They got out the good years. Yeah, so it's clearly a 40K vehicle. Cool. Neat. Yeah. I don't know who. I think I know that orc players feel very left out in 40K. I know orc players in 40K are like the death faction, of AOS. So I'm sure that they would be thrilled to have any kind of release if it happened. But who knows?
Anytime I look at these pictures, by the way, that are just like so zoomed in like that, I feel so bad for whoever it was that painted that. Because zooming in that far, you always see some little mistake.
Go see the marks
that they made.
Yep.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that's why they started doing them in black and white, because it just made the paint job look terrible. It didn't matter how good the model actually looked. You have to be painting like the heavy metal team does great work, but they're not doing competition pieces with everything out there, right? And even like a true master competition piece will generally look bad zoomed in that far. So theirs is just going to look garbage, and that's not fair because it's actually a beautiful model with a great paint job. It's just that it was never meant to be viewed like this, right? Like at this distance. So yeah.
Yes. And then the other big news this week is that full Warhammer Fantasy role-playing is back. Partnership with Cubicle 7. The initial launch is set in the old world. Thought I saw something from Pete or somebody like that. I don't remember, on Twitter, maybe an allusion to the idea that maybe something like this may be coming as well for AOS, maybe an expansion, or I don't remember where I saw that. But I thought it was for somebody that said kind of keep your eyes peeled for Warhammer Fest.
I think they themselves, Cubicle 7, responded that the initial setting for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay will be in the old world. But when asked about the Mortal Realms, they were they gave one of the standard responses of anything's possible, or something like that. It was in their Facebook responses. Which seems to me to be fine and great. The way to go, just have two different timelines you can play in the game. Yeah, two different settings. Super cool. Awesome. Why not? Yep. They're going to be very different games. Let me say that. In the way that they played. If I was going to design those two games from the ground up, they would have very, I would deploy rules a lot differently. The rules for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay should be gritty and realistic and exploring minutia of death and disease and sickness and dying from minor cuts and stuff. Whereas in Age of Sigmar rules in the Mortal Realms world, I would be everybody's basically a superhero type of thing. I would use that level of distinction in my RPG design rules to capture the worlds, and that's fine. Nothing wrong with that.
Well, they're just different worlds. Different kind of design philosophies. Yeah,
different worlds, different creative agendas, different theme, different tone, and you would want the rules to reflect that, right? So, if I'm tracking foodstuffs in the Mortal Realm, that's not correct, right?
Yes.
But if I'm plowing my way through 20 Chaos Warriors in the old world as just a regular human from the Empire, that's probably, without taking a scratch, that's probably also incorrect. But if you told me that you were a champion of the Stormcast and you plowed your way through 20 Chaos Warriors, I'd be yeah, sounds about right. Sure. That Retributor was just swinging that Star Soul mace wide and just, boom. He got it out like Ness's bat. Just ping, just gone. And that's fine. I'm down for that. All right. So what else we got, Tom?
Just events. We have Coalescence, or we have NashCon coming up in June 2nd. We have the global Coalescence event coming up on June 10th. I saw some people, it looks like it had adapted some of the skirmish stuff for the Coalescence event as well, which is pretty neat. It'll be neat to see those sites do that. And then obviously there's some other events, at least here in the Midwest, coming in July and August, but I don't have the dates on hand.
Well, and also obviously this weekend, big event happening.
Oh,
right?
Warhammer
Fest itself. Which obviously, even if you're not interested in the things that may be revealed or shared or whatever, and obviously there could be a lot of news this weekend. There'll be streams, lots of things going on like that, and probably a lot more discussion around new 40K, obviously. But probably we'll also get some more Middle Earth stuff, right? They'll probably, which is always interesting to me because I'm always looking for what Lord of the Rings stuff we can steal. Because some of the stuff is pretty awesome. You look at like Lake Town houses or stuff like that. Like I'm hard down for that. But obviously the other big thing is a new Golden Demon. So I'm always interested to see some of the pieces for that. Big shout out to Tabletop Minis, who's been on the show before. They have a piece that he shared with us. Just followed it on Twitter. I'll throw his Twitter down there so you can go check it out. But his dual piece is a Palador versus a Varangard. And holy God, it was beautiful. So all the best, man. I want to see that thing take home some medal, take home some trophy. So it's tough competition to be sure. And the dual category ain't no joke. But I think it's a great piece. So there you go. I think that's pretty much everything as far as news goes. Yep. So let's turn to some pick of the week. So Paul, what's your pick you want to share with everybody this week?
I'm just going to shamelessly self-promote. I am setting aside the free people for a little while, putting them on the shelf, and I am taking up the Blood for the Blood God and the Skulls for the Skull Throne, and starting up a new series going deep on everything Khorne. So I just threw out my first real video in that series today. Have another couple kind of queued up, ready to record. So that's definitely stuff to be looking out for. But in my usual style of analyzing things mathematically and coming up with, the most optimal sorts of options that we can find within that.
Fully support that.
Absolutely, man. I'm just looking forward to more. I like the way that you have a really systematic way you approach this stuff, and it helped, even though I'm not, as we talked about again before the show, a numbers guy. I like it when other people are, and I like it when other people do the legwork for me. That's really helpful. So let Paul do the complicated analysis and legwork for you. Tune into his channel and reap the benefits. It's great. It's
absolutely.
There you go. Paul's channel will be linked down below. If you're not subscribed to that, what are you doing? As you said, you already put out the first video today, and there were things I didn't even realize. There were things I was sort of like aware of, but then when you codified it, it sort of blew my mind. Like when you talked about just how many leaders in this army have command abilities. Like it's a truly there's nuts number of different command abilities that are spread out over this army. So just little things like that. Khorne is not lacking for dudes who want to be in charge. That's for sure.
Yeah, they're all bros. Of course not.
Yeah, it is truly an army of one girl. Like, right? Like there's literally one.
And she lists too.
It is a bro team army.
But Valkia, she is no joke.
No,
that's what I'm saying. Too.
Absolutely. We'll talk about her, I'm sure, when we get into our sort of best and worst breakdown. All right. So Tom, what about you, buddy? What do you got to share with everybody?
Tyler Mengel, friend of the show. Tyler regularly does reviews of things, and I want to highlight his skirmish review this week. Tyler did a pretty lengthy review, and a lot of it we had heard before, but he goes into some of the lore. He goes into some of the other elements in this, what's provided in the skirmish book, and pretty significant depth, talking about some of the rules and inclusions and stuff like that. And so it's really worth checking out. So I want to highlight Tyler's skirmish review kind of promo for the release this weekend.
Well, should be noted, he also talks about the fluff, right?
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah,
exactly. Like
most places haven't talked about that a lot.
Yes, he deep dives on the fluff, which is awesome. Sorry, I apologize. I didn't catch that you said that. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, I read over it earlier today. It's good. I liked it very much. Tyler always he's very thoughtful in how he approaches his blog. I don't know how he does it. I don't want to write that many words in a day. I can talk. I don't want to type. It's just too much work. It's like that's just old school.
So math, no. Typing, no. Talking,
no.
Yes.
Correct.
Like I can't paint and type. That's I've only got one set of hands. Maybe if I could get like those like extra breakout fingers from like Ghost in the Shell or whatever, that would be super useful. Then I could then I could do it. But until then, it's not going to happen.
You need it just in talk to text action.
There you go. Sure, I suppose I could do that, but nah. That also seems like work. Plus, the problem is then the grammar would just be horrible because it would be picking up my speech. Right? I don't have to worry about periods and commas and things like that. Dangling participles. I don't have to worry about dangling anything while I'm just talking, but I do have to worry about it when it suddenly becomes text. So my picks of the week, I've got two. I'm going to cheat because it's my show.
You didn't think that I was going to actually have a pick.
No, I did. I thought you were going to have a pick. I didn't think you wouldn't for a moment. I just have two things I thought I wanted to share. One serious and one kind of funny. So the first thing is new episode of Combat Phase is up, Kenny Lowell's podcast. And I'll shamelessly say that I'm on it, and I'm talking about zenithal highlighting and that kind of thing, and why I believe it's the thing you need to do if you want to paint your minis. As I've said many times on my tombstone, I would love to have my epitaph just say, stopped people from painting over black primer. If I could just get that to happen and have everybody zenithal all the time, I would consider my life a grand success.
None of the minis that I painted this week I zenithal, Vince. I thought you would appreciate that.
Well, you had different reasons for that, but that's fine.
Every single model that I have ever painted has just been in straight black primer.
Yes, I know. Most people do, and you're doing it wrong. It's that easy. You're literally just looking at your life and going, you know what I hate? My life. Time. The most precious resource I can never get back. I despise it. Why don't I just throw it out the window, trying to paint layers over this black color and getting thick, gross, gloppy paint over my mini to try to cover it? When instead, if I just zenithal, it'd be one thin layer and I'd instantly have a transition and I could call it done.
I mean, really though, but I mean, painting minis is just 3 steps, right? You just like base, wash, complete.
Yep.
Paint shade complete, baby. White Dwarf 1997. You know it. That's how it is. Exactly. So even if that's the case, even if that's your style, that paint step takes a lot longer over straight black primer. But we've deviated. Anyways, Combat Phase, check it out. Kenny Lowell's podcast is awesome. I'll have the link down there below. The new episode just dropped today. The other thing I would like to share is I watch a lot of, obviously, miniature painters channels, and one of my favorites is Dr. Faust. I'm sure many people are also familiar with Dr. Faust Painting Clinic. Great dude, great painter. He just put up a new review today of a model kit. I use my quotation fingers because it's a review of a model kit that I won't say anything else about except that it's a robot. And that if you ever feel like the models that we get from GW or something, or even if you're a fan of like Weird and these other companies that produce high-end quality models, if you ever really wonder about what else is out there and the world we could be living in, watch this review. It's a pretty fantastic review. He just watch the review. That's all I'll say. I don't want to give anything else away. You just, if you like a dry sense of humor, this is the Sahara Desert, my friend. That's all I'm saying. Check it out and realize how lucky we all are every day we pop a GW or a Weird or even like an Infinity kit, even though it's metal, and you look at that and we get these models at the quality level we do with the instructions we have and so on and so forth. Just there you go. I'll leave it at that. Check it out. All right. So let's talk about some hobby time. So, Paul, what have you been doing, man? You got a couple games in this last weekend we were talking about?
Yep. Actually, had a tournament this past weekend.
Nice.
Yeah. Our local group's actually been doing a monthly tournament, like single day tournaments. Next one's actually going to be Coalescence. So that's been really nice being involved in that, having the regular tournament scene kind of coming together in our area. As far as painting hobby-wise, I have been chugging through all of my Blades of Khorne. I originally had picked it up way back on the first budget of Sigmar and kind of put it down and picked it up again and put it down, picked it up, put it down. And then the new book came out. I'm like, oh boy, here we go. And so I've got just about the entire army painted to slightly above tabletop quality, I would say. And next phase is going to be kind of going through adding more detail and making it not just tabletop quality.
Nice. Excellent. That's awesome. See, that's a good way to go about it. You get it painted sort of on there, ready to play, and then you can always go back and touch up and add to it later. I like that.
I just got a thing with like playing unpainted models, so I want to get it to like at least tabletop quality, and then I'll worry about making it really nice later.
I truly love, like, the thing about painting Khorne is that it's just like, hey, I hope you like flesh, because guess what?
In red, flesh and red.
It's like, well, I've seen plenty of people do alternate color schemes rather than red. Like, I've seen the ceramic, like white looks really good. I've seen people do like the black or very black red, something like that. And those all look cool. It's all good. I think you can mix the color scheme, but no matter what, like, those dudes have got skin everywhere. Like, the Reavers are just shirtless dudes. It's just that army is like a lot of shirtless dudes. That is what it is. Yes. Yeah, when you get like the Blood Warriors and stuff. But yes, it's like leg plates and shirtless dudes. They're all really proud of like their abs, their lats, and other delts, probably. I don't know, other muscle groupings. They are the bro team. They've all spent a lot of time at the gym. They're super stoked about it. They see no reason to wear a shirt to battle. Okay.
Yeah. One of the cool little bits of fluff in the Blades of Khorne book that I had noticed is that one of the tribes that they talk about in the fluff portion, they go into battle in white armor. And their goal is to dye their armor red with the blood of their enemies. And I wish I had thought of that idea for like army painting when I had started this thing, because it would just look completely awesome doing that well and putting that on the table.
That is a cool concept. I do dig that. White's always tough because you got to do, like, white is just one of true white and true black are two of the hardest colors to paint because it's hard to make them look realistic. But that being said, I do love the narrative of that like crazy. Like, that is a super sweet idea. They start the battle in white armor, they end the battle in red armor. Yeah, that's cool. I dig that. A lot of chance to use some good blood effects there too and have them really stand out, right? So
yeah,
I just hate blood effects. Sorry.
It's like, they look great when you do it right. The problem is most people go over the top. But like a couple sprays back from axes over shoulders and stuff like that, if you do them in a targeted fashion, that could look really good. So it's just a problem when people just like go, or like treat blood from the blood god like a wash. That's when it becomes a problem.
Yes.
Yeah. So, there's a too far with this, as with most.
You're saying there are limits.
Yes. As with most effects type things like that. If you go too far, it just becomes nothing, right? Like, making a model look dirty is fun. Making a model mud caked, you just made a mud thing, right? It doesn't look like a model anymore. It's just a big mud monster. All right, Tom, what's on your table, buddy? What are you working on?
So, with NashCon coming up, so anybody that knows me knows I like to change lists.
I love that you've been running lists by me like nonstop for like 2 months for that. And I was like, yesterday was like, I should put a list together.
Yeah. And so, like last week I was like, you know what? I'm scrapping one of my lists. I need to be able to have a response to the Skyfire spam. And potentially to the Herald, like to the Blades of Khorne. Like, there's a couple aspects of the Blades of Khorne list, if they include the right things, could thwart me pretty hard on one of my lists. And so I said I need to have an answer to that. And so I decided I needed to paint 40 more models for the event. So that started yesterday. And I am well on my way. Where are my photos? Here we go. So I did a Balewind, because who doesn't like a Balewind? And then
People
the other
that
one,
don't like to cheat, that's who.
Exactly.
Yeah, well,
Thank you, Paul. Much love, brother. Much love.
That's convenient. That's convenient because I like to cheat. So, I added Balewind because why not? Hey, I didn't get to use one in Adepticon, so guess what? Added one here. And then the other one I added was my 40 models that I'm working on. So, it has begun, is what I would say. And yeah, so I started yesterday, and I'm making pretty good progress. So I've been sitting here touching up some of the brimstone horrors. They've been a real challenge, being all flame and making them look legitimate. So yeah, that's what I'm working on. So I'm hoping to be done in about 2 days. That's the goal.
Nice. Well, I mean, you did pick good models for that kind of speed painting, is what I'll say, right? Like, I mean, they tend to be rather uniform. They tend to be in it. They're in a color. They don't have a lot of mixed materials. So, you know.
Yeah, like I don't get me wrong. I couldn't have made this decision with another model type.
Right.
Like,
you could like doing 40 Zangor or something. And
that's off the table. But this was just something that, like, I already had the pink horrors in my sideboard and already painted. And so, like, given that, like, I ought to at least, since I have the extra points, have the utility of having blues and brimstones, if I just want to multiply and use them as a tar pit. So I pulled the trigger, and so we'll see. My big fear at this point is being able to fit all my minis on my board. That's going to be an issue, because you have to display everything on the board, and I'm like probably pushing 200 minis on the board, something like that. And it's like has lots of terrain and places where you can't actually put minis, so that could be a problem.
Well, there you go. I probably need to make a board too.
Yeah, you might want to do that.
Work.
You know what is awesome for that? Sheet of plywood.
Sure, absolutely. No, I just, I'm not gonna I'm taking one of my better painted armies and trying to be like a hobbyist for the event because I don't care about winning. And so, like, to show up with all the things on like a cookie tray would be like, that's just not.
Look at me.
Yeah, talk about tripping when you're rounding third. Like, I'm just saying, go the distance. So it's fine. For me personally, my hobby time has been spent working on. I'm not going to show the actual girl because I'm going to save her. She wouldn't come through anyways, and I love her. But I've been working on this, which is this is obviously not my paint job. This is the Savage Beauty from Black Sun Miniatures, which is a absolute gorgeous model, 75 millimeter. Maybe the coolest, like just the best size to paint in. And so she's done, but I'm just working on her base today. So that's where we're at with that. That should be done. Hopefully she'll be all good to go tomorrow. So very excited. She's going to be another piece for competition here coming up. So let's see how that goes. All right.
Where do you think you'll compete with her?
I don't know yet. There's a couple places I want to take her in the latter part of the year. They finally put up the Gen Con painting competition rules this year, and they had some changes. So I need to think about what I'm taking. Like, I need to really sit down and figure out what's going where for the rest of the year. Line up projects. I mean, I've got time. It's like 2-ish months until Gen Con, so it's fine. Little less than. All right, so let's talk about Khorne, shall we? Let's talk about some blood for the Blood God. So before we get into the sort of, we're going to do some best and worst and stuff like that. But before we get into the nitty and the gritty, I thought we'd start by just kind of talking about overall impressions of the Force. Okay. So Paul, you've been getting into it. You just played in the tournament. You took them. What's your current overall impressions of them? Like just initial blush at this point. What do you like? What do you find challenging? That kind of thing.
I think they have the typical challenge that you have with Khorne is that they've got no shooting and they've got no magic. And
that's
with that, like that's definitely it's a detriment to the Force. It makes it very much more one-dimensional, and you have to be really good at the things you're good at.
By the way, do you know why they don't have any shooting?
I do not know.
It's because they brought all these guns. All right, go ahead.
All right, I'm just going to recover for a second.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
Nope, I'm not. I'm very proud of myself. Please continue.
I am a sucker for a good pun.
Absolutely.
On the flip side, like everything that Khorne is good at, this book has made them really exceptionally, unbelievably good at. Yeah, we'll get into it when we get into like the best and the worst. Like the whole blood tithe table is like exactly the kind of mechanic that I would want to see Khorne have. We got some new battalions, I believe, in this book, which are really strong. If they're not new, they at least didn't have points in the General's Handbook.
A lot of them did, but yeah, they did. We did get some new stuff.
Yeah. In general, like it just took what Khorne was already good at and brought that to 11 and did absolutely nothing for the holes in the army, which I think it makes it strong but fair and balanced and fun.
Yeah, that's been, we've had in my group, we've had somebody who jumped on more or less when the book came out. And so they've been running it since then. And I think I would agree with your like the way that you sort of laid it out. Exactly. And I think that honestly has made them a lot of fun to both. We generally do 2-on-2 games. So they've been fun to both play against and to play with, as it were, right, as a teammate. So they're interesting, is what I'll say. But you don't ever feel like, oh, God, here comes the cheese again or something like that, right? It's just like, yeah, it's, for the most part, they're doing what you would expect.
Anything cheesy that they do, like you can't help but like everybody at the table cackle in laughter at the ridiculous thing that happens.
Absolutely. So, Tom, one of the questions that got asked in the chat was, what units are you, or what things in the Blades of Khorne are you worried about? Do you like that you altered your list some for? So as you talk about your high level, do you want to touch on that as well?
Yeah. So it's the I mean, there's one big offender, and it I want to make sure I get the language right. It's one of the items. I believe is it the Brazen Rune? Is that the one? Where'd it go? I should have had it open to this because I knew
really should have. Yeah.
The Brazen Rune. Yeah. So roll a dice. Blah blah blah. None of that matters. What matters is that once per game, you can choose to expend the rune's power to automatically unbind one enemy spell, after which it has no effect. And so what this is important for, or the reason why this is important, is because you can do this even if the other player has went first. And so what this does, so one of the tactics for my Nurgle list is to outdrop the enemy, which I would still do for most Khorne lists. And then like 3 dice sail spell, throw a bunch of huge Chaos Warrior block forward and start grinding top of 1. And the reality is that they could be like, nope, no sail.
Right,
Stop.
they can just shut off that spell.
They can shut it off, and so it changes the entire the math of the tactics. Because then what ends up happening is that they can end up using all their high movement stuff to push forward, and I don't make them retake territory. Like that's the advantage of my list, is that I can take control of 75% of the board at the top of 1, and then make them fight for every inch to regain territory. Right. And most lists can't outgrind me.
Well, that's just the thing. Your force is full of anvils, not hammers, right?
Right.
So if they engage you up on your line, like you're probably going to be able to take it, but you're never going to move forward.
Right. And so the issue would be, And like to put things in perspective, like one of our viewers, I played him in game 2, and he ran a Khorne force, pure Khorne. It was before Blade, so it didn't have all the extra toys. But it was pure Khorne. It was mono Khorne, and I pushed up, and I slammed into his entire front line with my Chaos Warrior block. I was like, "Here's proof of concept. Let's go." So the top of 1, I charged in and hit his entire front line with my Chaos Warriors.
Right.
And like locked everybody, but like one unit of Blood Warriors not in combat. Everybody, all the hero, like everybody I could touch. And we started grinding from the top of 1. And I ground them down almost completely for the entire game, and only my Chaos Warrior block fought. Nothing else fought but those Chaos Warriors, and I grounded through his entire army.
And the point being is that they only need to, like, the fact that rune works once isn't a detriment to stopping your list, because they literally only need to stop that spell once.
Yes, once.
Because then
like,
they go...
I don't use it. Like, Sail is he's like a trick. He's like, I need to eliminate Sail. Once I've used him, I could throw him away. It doesn't matter for my list, because I don't need to keep moving troops around.
Right.
Like, I only have to move once.
Yeah.
And so this stops that. And so I needed a list that had a second toy that could fix the problem of not being able to sail my troops forward. And I do. And I have a wonderful solution to that in my list, in my alternative list. But it took some thinking to kind of think through what I would need to do in order to accomplish that.
So very quickly, I'll wrap through mine. There are 2 things I find interesting about the Blades of Khorne. The first being that and they're both related to each other. The major mechanic, which you already mentioned, Paul, is Blood Tithe, right? And so just at a high level for the viewers who might not be familiar, long story short, if a unit dies, period, of either side, right? If a unit gets removed from the battle, be it a single model like a hero or an entire unit like a big group of bloodletters, it's irrelevant. If they're gone, you get a Blood Tithe point, okay? Again, yours or enemies. So one of the things that becomes an interesting option is to be running lots of, throwaway trash heroes or multiple small unit, right? Run an MSU type of thing. And basically have chaff that you can afford to just get killed, right? To sort of constantly be drip feeding the Blood Tithe throughout the game. And it works really well. The other thing that I'll say is interesting from a game design perspective that is unique about Khorne. And this is, so there's a concept in game design that's basically known as winning for losing, right? And so it's in games that are in any way competitive or have chances to fail, you're going to fail or lose some of the time, right? And certain people are very sensitive to losing or failing. So how do you make that experience still fun, right? So you have to have but still have it be a failure, yeah? And so when you can shove mechanics in that have sort of backside bennies on losing.
Yep.
You do that. And I will say, I've watched the person in my group who plays Khorne Bloodbound. He'll have units just wrecked off the table. Okay. And he'll be like, oh, I get a Blood Tithe point. Like, whatever, fine, that unit's dead. But I get a Blood Tithe point. Like, there's something to be excited about, even when your own stuff dies. Right. Yep. And it sounds so funny. But it's a unique little psychological trick. The army tricks you into constantly having fun, even when your stuff is dying, which is an amazing thing. Most armies don't have that in this game.
Nope.
And it functions nicely as a catch-up mechanic as well if the game starts going poorly for you. Yep. Some of those Blood Tithe abilities are pretty powerful. It can really... if you're in a rough spot, they could swing a game back in your favor. So it's definitely nice that it's also functionally a catch-up mechanic and not just a win more mechanic.
No, I agree. That is another excellent point. You're right, because suddenly you get up to there, you're gonna get behind, you pull this massive, sort of like double pile in at a random time during their hero phase, or pile in an attack or whatever, and that's a game changer. When suddenly your hammer unit smashes into them in their hero phase.
Yep.
Right. Yes.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, that's an excellent point. All right. So let's get into so now let's do some nitty and some gritty. So let's start out with kind of battle line and generic units, just like non-leaders, non-monsters, that kind of stuff. The units that are out there in Khorne, as you pointed out, we're talking about a big spread here when we're talking about Blades of Khorne, right?
Yep.
Because we're talking about both Bloodbound and Mortals.
Demons. Yep.
Which, well, I start out with Bloodbound and Mortals, right? Which have some overlap-ish in places, right? Like Slaves to Darkness being the... Sorry, Bloodbound and Slaves to Darkness, what I mean. All have this kind of mortal overlap to a point. And then you've got the demons, which are more their own thing, but still have some interactions here and there. So there's a wide swath of units here. It's you're not starved for choice, as you are in most, like as is true for most of the Chaos Forces.
Like in the Nurgle Rotbringers.
Sure. Well, I mean, again, but if you took across all of Nurgle, if you had a book that allowed you to freely combine across Nurgle,
yes.
right?
I wouldn't be complaining. Otherwise, right. I just have Blight Kings and Nurgle Rotbringers, like as an actual troop. Yes.
I mean, what these two books is what the Tzeentch and Khorne book have done have put Chaos back together the way it feels like it should be.
Yeah.
Right.
I would agree with that.
Just make a lot of stuff depending on your general. Like, okay, well, the magic item you select is based on is your general a demon or a mortal or blah 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 blah. Right. So cool. Thumbs up. Anywho, so let's get into it. Paul, with just like, think best, think worst, whatever. Just talk about the ones you like and don't like for your like battle line, your general units, stuff like that. Where's your head at with them?
I like that their cheap battle line units don't suck. I think that's really refreshing coming from playing free people so much, where so much of your battle line is throwaway trash that you're just min-maxing just to fill a requirement. Like Blood Warriors are fairly priced and they do some serious damage.
They do some work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they really do some work. And you can still sort of play that min-max game. They're 100 points for your battle line unit, and they're effective. And you'd probably be playing them anyway. And as I'll end up probably pointing out again later, a lot of your battalions make you use them anyway. Like a lot of your battalions basically just dictate what your battle line is.
Yep.
Which it doesn't really feel like a bad thing.
Which could be bad. It could be bad, but they've made it so that it's not bad.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then you have some other battle line options, like you can take Chaos Warriors as battle line. Which is
it's funny because Khorne is like the one. Sure, but at the same time, Khorne is the one where I never feel compelled to take Chaos Warriors, right? Like with my Tzeentch stuff, I almost always feel like I've got to have some Chaos Warriors in the mix, just because they're the only thing that fills that exact role. Whereas Blood Warriors are often so close, like they're tough enough and have interesting kickback damage mechanics with their, their interesting punchy shield fist thing,
or the pile-in. Or like the ability to pile in and do damage off turn. Yeah.
Yeah. That like I feel like okay, I'll just stick with the Khorne Blood Warrior or Khorne Chaos Warriors, right? I mean that's basically what they are. It's the Khornified Chaos Warriors. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. It's good that they're a straight replacement, and I don't feel compelled to take them. That being said, it's not like if you do need like a rock choice or something, you can still Chaos Warriors are still a pretty good defensive choice. So. But who wants defense in Khorne? Come on.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, there's still something to be said for taking a block of like 20 Blood Reavers, because you can get them up to absolutely absurd numbers of attacks, even if they're just 4-up with a 6-up save.
Yeah, they have a save now. That's kind of a big deal.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a really big deal.
Quantity has a quality all its own, I believe, is the statement, right? And yes, that is very true. Those guys you can just boost them to a ridiculous number, which I think is something we'll probably talk about later when we get to the leaders section of just the insane ability of this army to add attacks, right? Like it's just fallen out everywhere. It is a very, very popular thing. So.
Yeah. And mathematically speaking, adding either attacks or damage to units is mathematically the best buff that you can give anything.
Right. Exactly. especially when you're actually increasing the attack's characteristic and stuff like that, as we'll talk about.
Yes.
So are there any? So what stands out that you don't like? Are there any units in the mix that you find underwhelming, that you do not enjoy?
I'm still warming up to Skull Reapers. I feel like I need to look at them more, and I don't own any. Like they're the other half of the Wrathmonger kit, and it always feels like Wrathmongers are strictly a better choice to go with. But there's a lot of battalions that require the Skull Reapers, so it's something I'm hesitant about. And
no, don't be. Explore them. Trust me. Their mortal wound generation potential is significant.
Yeah, it's something that I'm looking into that I'm not currently super excited about.
See, I'm actually coming down that side. I hear you, Tom. Like, I don't disagree that they can do that.
So can I go ahead?
I was just gonna say, Skull Reapers for me are they're the solution looking for a problem in the army. Like, fitting them in is always is the problem, because I don't know what they do for their cost. That's my problem. I just they don't feel like they do enough, because when I put them up against Wrathmongers, and I know what who are obviously the other side of that kit, right? And similarly ish pointed, model count wise. Wrathmongers have a very obvious purpose to me.
Right. Throw them at something big. Yes.
Yeah, we'll just run around, buff the attacks of all my troops until I find something big that I want to get to commit suicide, right? And then have them go make it kill itself.
Yeah.
They have a really, really distinct role. Whereas Skull Reapers, I don't know what they're doing that's that much better than several other units in the army. That's my argument. I don't know where they fit. Because they're the first cut. That's how I'd say it.
Well, let me ask this: where are you getting mortal? So if you you don't have a lot of heavy rend, okay, in Khorne, there is some out there, but it is few and far in between. It's on very specific things. It's not strewn throughout. And so their ability to, when they hit roll 6 or higher, kick out a mortal wound in addition to other damage, that's significant.
We're talking, understanding that we would be restricting this to Bloodbound, because it's ironic you'd be talking about lack of mortal wound generation in an army that literally has an attack pattern called the Bloodletter Bomb, wherein you generate mortal wounds with a thing on a 4-up. So, but if we restrict this discussion to just the mortal side of it, sure, I'll grant you that.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, is that they're bringing the mortal wound options into, they are a tight package delivery mechanism for mortal wounds. And that's not, and they get a reroll failed hits if they're running total, blah, 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 blah. So they're checking out 3 attacks per model base, all of your 6s to hit. You could bring that down with other buffs.
Sure.
Are going to kick out mortal wounds, and they get to eventually reroll all failed hits. And so you are going to, they're doing something that Bloodletters do on a much smaller footprint. Okay. As a mortal. So they're gaining all the other mortal buffs that are out there. I think they are valuable for what they bring to the table, is what I would say.
Fair enough. I would never say they're bad. I don't think they're bad.
There's just a lot.
They always get to they always get to reroll 1s to hit. Yeah. So out of the gate, they're rerolling 1s, which is significant, because that ability, that 1 sword ability, does wounds back to, that's if the wound roll is 1. Sorry, you take the mortal wound instead. But again,
rerolls of hit on a thing that triggers when you've got their weapons that trigger on a 6 is any rerolling into a X or better, where you're also theoretically buffing the hit number, is a good thing.
But let me also say, by the way, they still do their wound rolls. That's the difference with the Bloodletters, is that they kick out those mortal wounds and still roll normal damage. Bloodletters don't. They stop.
Sure.
And so that's one of the differences. So, I mean, like, I think there is value to them. And I watched, I think it was the LVO, maybe. I watched a game where somebody sailed a block of like 15 of these or whatever forward and just obliterated everything that it touched. And it just ran around. It doesn't matter what it was attacking, whether it was, treatment ancients or whatever. It was just cutting through because it was kicking out all those mortal wounds. And again, it's a much smaller footprint than like a 30 block of bloodletters. So anyways, and you're getting more of those attacks in on your target where the bloodletters are going to have to spread out.
Yes, no, it's a fair point. It's the tighter package argument is not, it's not nothing, right?
Yeah.
Like I will agree that's definitely a thing. Like it's, even though they're on a slightly bigger base, it's still easier to fit 10 dudes somewhere than 30 dudes somewhere, right? So yeah, that's, you're not wrong. So
I think they have a place, is what I would say. And if they're in a battalion, that's what I would say. That's the advantage. Is like if they're in the battalion, they're already worked into your list. Sure. Where bloodletters, like you're really having to go mono demon or heavy demon in order to make the bloodletter, whole package work.
Right.
Yeah. And if you're running sail, then you don't get to use any of these goodies at all.
Yep. Which is why I'm not suggesting you sail. I'm just saying that I saw them to great effect with sail. Now there's enough other tools in the Khorne toolbox now that
repertoire.
You wouldn't need sail in order to wreak havoc with those dudes, especially with some of the new battalions.
Yes, there's a lot of free movement floating around in a lot of the new battalions. We'll talk about battalions a little later. All right. So rather than go down the line, I thought we'd just kind of do this discussion format like this. So what do we think about, what about Mighty Skull Crushers? These guys were the terror of the previous edition, right? 3 of them would just bounce armies. What has become of the Skull Crusher?
The what?
Exactly. I think that's a fair response because I don't. Yes. Our shout out to Joe Cryer, who's still using them like left and right. But beyond Joe, I don't know if I've seen him on the table. Paul, what do you think about him?
I own 9.
Do you use them?
Yes. I think if you run them with the Brass Stampede Battalion, I think it brings them up to the level that makes them playable. It's the same deal as Demigriffs on their own are not that great. Run them in the Brotherhood of Knights Battalion, and suddenly they're kicking a lot of ass. So that's kind of where I'm at with them. Like, I don't think I would run them without the battalion, but running them with the battalion feels like it's like a thing that you should probably do most of the time.
You literally took the words out of my mouth. Yes, I was going to say, like, to me, again, and not to jump ahead to battalions, but to me, as they stand, just sort of rules as written on the war scroll, right? I find them tragically underwhelming given what they cost. Now, that being said, they're interesting in the way that they can sub in as battle line in the right situation. They're a circumstantial battle line unit, right? If your board is the Lord on Juggy, which is a funny thing to me. And they having when we talk about all the things that add to attacks characteristics, they are a unit that naturally has 2 attack rows, right? And so in a lot of these cases will benefit. Both of those attack rows will benefit from buffs to attacks. One of the things that's fascinating to me about them is if you look at the Tzeentch release, most of the mortal people who ride discs around, right, inherited the demon keyword as well.
Yep.
Right. But Skull Crushers are clearly riding demons. Yeah, I don't think any of us would argue with that. They're writing Juggies of Khorne, which is, last time I checked, is a demonic mount. And yet these guys don't get the demon keyword.
Yeah. It's a shame.
The Lord on demonic mount, like that true title, who could take the Mark of Khorne, gets the demonic keyword, but the Lord of Khorne on Juggernaut or whatever, that guy, whatever his full title is, does not.
The Mighty Lord of Khorne.
Well, no, he's just like, it's Khorne Lord on Juggernaut or something, whatever it's called. He does not have the demon keyword, being the case. And I wonder if I don't know that would make the biggest difference, but there would be synergies that would impact. Right?
That's true.
There's some, but there's just not that many things that buff just demons. So I don't think it really matters that much.
Yeah, I'm like
it may be more of a detriment. Let me just say, because I think about like, man, sitting across the table from like a Bastiladon or like Chameleon Skinks or whatever.
Sure.
Like the fact that they don't have the demon keyword, they should be thinking, or an altar like a war altar. All of those things are death to demons. And so the fact that they don't have the demon keyword may actually be more beneficial.
Yeah.
Well, I think about like the demon leaders, like the various bloodthirsters, like their command abilities, like the Wrath of Khorne bloodthirster that has like the, everybody, or not everybody, but a bunch of people, I don't remember, some number of units within 16 inches or something can run and charge and add 1 to but it's only for Khorne demons, right? So like you can hit blood crushers who are tragically underwhelming. By the way, if skull crushers are underwhelming, blood crushers are just like, shut up, get out of here. What are you doing?
Blood crushers?
Exactly. Like they're the only thing that makes skull crushers look good is blood crushers, who are just so terrible because they can't build the numbers up like the bloodletters can to actually make the mortal wound sword, go to work. Right.
Yep.
What is funny to me is that the blood crushers got a battalion that is almost word for word identical to the Brass Stampede.
Right. It just they feel so duplicitous. I'll be completely honest. They're just a worse version of that.
Yeah, that's it.
That thing. Yeah. Like everything they are like how you have a celebrity and then you have like the D-list celebrity that looks almost like them. That's blood crushers. They're just the D-list version of skull crushers.
Yep.
So, yeah. That's what I'll say. In fact, most of my disappointment with the generic units comes in the demon side of things.
Yeah. I feel like demons are just like, you're not going to be building a Khorne demon army. You're going to be building a mortal Khorne army that splashes in a couple of demons. I
don't know. Ben Johnson rolled up to with the Khorne demon army. But
yeah, he had 4 or Scarbrand, 3 bloodthirsters, and a summon bloodthirster. How did he do?
He got last at the
Yeah, he got last.
But I'm sure it was awesome.
No doubt about that. Like 5 bloodthirsters is a heck of a job. I don't disagree with that. But yes, now that being said, I agree with your original premise that when you take the Brass Stampede, all of a sudden skull crushers become, and you're clearly building a different force at that point, right? Like when you take the Brass Stampede, you're basically building a skull crusher army, and all of a sudden those dudes can get bonkers in the way that their impact hits things go and stuff like that, the mortal wounds that they generate, that kind of stuff. Suddenly just the math changes, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And the important thing to note too is you only need 3 units of skull crushers.
Right.
Like, you can max it out to 7 plus the Lord. But the minimum requirement for that battalion is 3 units of skull crushers.
Right.
And I think that is very easily fit into an army.
Yeah, the total commitment is not huge. You're absolutely right. Now, that being said, there's also the other, I don't know that there's a world where it's really useful, because that Brass Stampede has that weird setting where if you maximize everything to 8 or whatever, if you get to the number of Khorne or whatever, then that other trigger flips over. I'm trying to remember now what it is, but I did
is not worth it.
Right. I read that and I was like,
not worth it.
Strike this ability, forget this exists, and just look at the other 2. Is it worth it? And I think the answer is still yes. I think you just pretend like that ability isn't written on the paper. Like it's just the ipsum lorem factum thing. That's just, the Latin nonsense, nothing that's just text, just empty text.
This is a trick. It's a trap. Don't do it.
Yes.
Yep.
All right. Are there? So to me, if I had to pick a worst in the army, it would be Blood Crushers. By the way, that's bottom line. Is there any other units we didn't touch on that you wanted to hit on here in the best and worst review?
Just are we talking about infantry or was it battle line?
Yeah, just battle line, the units in general, your infantry stuff.
I mean, bloodletters are worth mentioning for the bloodletter bomb.
Yeah, we talked about it. I mean, I think everybody knows at this point. They know what they are. It's like the definition of glass cannon, right? It's
yep.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I feel like there was something else in there that I was like, pretty much never going to play this.
You're talking about that Fleshhound army, weren't you? Led by Karanak. That's what you were thinking about.
You know, somebody at the tournament that I played yesterday actually ran that army.
That is amazing. Kudos to that. Do they actually have like real Fleshhounds, or were they using proxy Fleshhounds?
I think they were using alternate models.
Okay. Because if I had somebody show up with the 20 pounds of metal, it would be to have a real legitimate Fleshhound army. I would shake their hand, man. That's impressive feat.
They were definitely resin. So
gotcha.
What I would do is I would do, so the other one I think is worth mentioning that I think that it's just underrepresented, and I think part of his scarcity of models is, like, I really think Korgoraths, especially in certain battalions, are real shit kickers that people just haven't discovered yet.
Yeah, there is something to be said too for that little clause on their war scroll that everybody kind of misses, that like the things around them get like -1 bravery.
Yeah,
that you can really build a Khorne bravery bomb list and, you know, make all of your opponent's units run away after you beat the living crap out of them.
So if anything, I think, and we'll probably get to this with battalions, but I think there's some potential in Korgoraths that we just don't see on the table as much as I think we should.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
That's what I would say.
All right. We'll come back to it then in battalions. So if we talked about the sort of, you know, the meat of the army, as it were, the chaff, let's talk about some leaders, some heroes, right? Yep. So Paul, back to you first to kick us off. What stands out to you? What are your go-tos?
Well, again, it kind of weaves in the battalions again.
Sure.
But the Gore Pilgrims battalion and the your slaughter priests and your blood secretor, how much more powerful they get with that battalion is just so absurd. You know, just running minimum on that battalion, your blood secretor's Portal of Skulls opens up to 30 inches instead of 18.
Yep.
And your slaughter priests get to re-roll failed casts. Like, and your only other requirements other than that are, 2 battle line units that I'm going to run anyway. And it's like 80 points. And by the way, you get an extra artifact. And when we get to artifacts, oh man, do they have some good artifacts to choose from.
Yeah, and I think what's really relevant about, first of all, totally agree. You picked, like, you definitely are banging on the cylinders I was going to hit on too. Because what I love about, and you know, we can just mention it now, that Gore. What I love about that battalion. Good night. By the way, I bit my tongue. It's not an excuse. I bit my tongue before the show. The hardest I have ever bit my tongue in my life when I was eating dinner. I heard my tongue, like the flesh crush or whatever it is, whatever your tongue's made of. Yeah, it was unpleasant. So anyways, so I had to get a little blood for the blood god into my mouth to get ready to go. So at any rate, those two heroes were already, to me, the two standout heroes of the bunch, right? Like, take Gore Pilgrims out of the mix. Assume that battalion doesn't exist. And you asked me who are two of your favorite heroes. I would have already picked the Slaughter Priest and the Blood Secretor, right? Because the portal is great, and the Slaughter Priest has truly one of the unique abilities in the game. I'm not saying it like I think there is one or two other ways to do it, but their ability to
Khorne, let me point out what you're talking about. The other ability is in Khorne. It's the Bloodthirster to pull.
Oh yeah. Yes. So there are a couple other ways to move the units, but that ability to like that Scorpion get over here maneuver, right? Is just so good. It's so good.
Yeah, having problems with Balewind Vortexes, folks? Guess what? There's your solution.
I mean, one of the last games I played, I was allied with the Khorne player. We won the game at the bottom of the final round by him because he had 2 Slaughter Priests and he had Gore Pilgrims, and he prayed the enemies off the objective. Right? Like, and that was it. Like, without them holding that objective, they couldn't win. They didn't get the points to win the game. And it just, he filled them up with the Bloodlust, and they had to run off the objective. And there was no way even stringing them out that he could keep them on, because it was just small units, right? At that point, he had been holding it with he was holding the objective with 2 or 3 dudes. So they just, like, in an objective-based game, controlling enemy movement is so stupidly good. So the fact that it makes those 2 already awesome heroes better,
yeah,
I'm in, man. I'm in like Flynn. Like, absolutely.
And that's not even mentioning like the new blessings that we get in this book too for the Slaughter Priests.
Right.
Like, some of those are just nuts.
Yeah, I agree. There are some really, really, really good ones in there. And by the way, let's not, like, the other one isn't bad either. Like, it's not like the alternate, if you don't need to move somebody, it's not like Blood Boil or whatever, or Blood Boil's the pull one. Whatever the one is that does.
It's not like doing a D6 mortal wounds is a terrible thing.
Exactly. Yeah, that's
like, let's be honest here.
It's pretty great, as a matter of fact. Yeah, it's pretty freaking great. So, like, it's just a dude with 2 good options.
I got hit with that, by the way. So I engaged top of 1, and then he turned and he was like Blood Boil or whatever, and he was like D6 4 mortal wounds, and I was like, what the what? He has a what?
Yeah, man.
D6.
Those guys are great.
I mean, my Chaos Warriors took it on the chin with their multiple ward saves against mortal wounds. So I was like, oh, whatever. But still, I was like, D6 mortal wounds? Really? He's like a mini hell cannon running around.
So yeah. Absolutely. So I suspect but we're preaching to the choir here, I think, right? Yeah. Like, anybody who knows Khorne knows these are already 2 good ones. So let's get down to the second string. Who else? Like, who else are your picks, and perhaps more importantly, who are the losers?
Blood Throne.
Look, don't be stealing my one.
Dude, Blood Throne's the hero.
Shut it. I know. Why do you gotta steal my thunder, Tom? All right, go ahead. Go ahead, Paul.
It's I absolutely love the Skull Grinder.
What?
And
go on.
Go on. And it all has to do with just stacking buffs and abilities. And when we get over to the artifacts,
is this the Doom and Darkness Skull Grinder? Is that the one you're building here? The Doom and Darkness Skull Grinder? The Doom and Darkness Skull Grinder. He's the first person I ever saw mention it, so I'm going to give him full credit. So way to go, Doom. The Doom and Darkness Skull Grinder uses all the attack buffs and then takes the thing that doubles your attack's characteristic.
Yes.
And then if you don't kill somebody, right, you turn into a Chaos Squad. Right. So suddenly this lunatic who's 2 up, 3 up, neg 1 rend, blah, blah damage, really good damage. 3 damage base, I think.
3 damage, yeah.
Yeah. It's making 8 or 9 attacks, whatever, depending on how it's stacked. And just crushing people. But if he doesn't, then he's a spawn. He's dead.
Yeah, but all you have to do is not attack Archeon. And
sure.
But it's so tempting. In all seriousness, with the Portal of Skulls plus, you're probably running an Aspiring Deathbringer, maybe a unit of Wrathmongers is following him around too. So that's got him up to 5 attacks base times 2, 10 attacks at 3 up, 2 up, rend 1, 3 damage. Like, if you don't kill some things, the dice gods really hate you.
Yeah. It's 9, by the way, not 10. Because the Wrathmongers notably don't add to your attack's characteristic. They only add an attack. So they wouldn't get doubled. The other two are attack's characteristic. The Wrathmongers just literally say make 1 extra attack. So anyway, minor nit. I still stand behind what you said. 9 attacks at those numbers. If something isn't dead, like, yeah, you're right. Just be a little smart about your target, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Just don't go after a monster. Go after a unit. Maybe even go after a hero. Just don't try for the Stonehorn.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Don't go after the Stonehorn is generally good advice for your solo hero. But that being said, most other like 5 wound heroes just come out paced on the other side of that guy, right? Yeah. So I do love that crazy build.
And the stupid thing too is that, like, with all of this craziness that he can put out, he's 80 points.
Mm-hmm.
And just as a side note, folks that are down with Silver Tower, he is equally bonkers in Silver Tower. Like, he is good to the point that he makes the game not fun for the other people you're playing with.
It's like Slambo.
Yeah, he just goes through and he's just like, oh, there's things in this room? No, there's not anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you just get like him, Slambo, the Knight, Zeros or Venator, whatever the bow guy is. You just like your ultimate Silver Tower team that just literally stomps through the whole thing and never has a problem. It's like, I don't get it, guys. Why do you find this hard?
Yeah.
All the cheaters. Yeah, so yes, I agree. And the fun part about that build is that none of that stuff is really dedicated to him, right? What I mean by that is like the Portal's still buffing everybody else. The Wrathmongers are still buffing other people. The Aspiring Deathbringer are still buffing. It's just
so it's not a heavy investment is the key.
Right. You're exactly right. If you turn him into a chaos spawn, that sucks, but it's 80 points. Okay.
Yeah, your 80-point model gets replaced by a 60-point model.
Right.
So interesting question for you guys. That instance where he turns into a chaos spawn, does that require summoning points?
It's a new model on the table, so the answer is yes. In general, anytime if it's a new model on the table.
Anything down on the table, it requires reinforcement points.
Yep. Same with like Scar Bloodwrath. Same with like Scar.
That's the problem with Scar. Yeah, like he's one of my worst picks because of the way that he interacts with reinforcement points. Every time he rolls back onto the table, got to pay points for him again.
Yep.
And he's unique, so he can't take artifacts, which in this army seems like it's a pretty big drawback.
Yeah, as if it wasn't a big enough, kick in the teeth for him.
Yeah, I agree. For me, if we're going to talk about the unique heroes, it's Valkia all the way. Like Valkia, yes, absolutely. Yeah. Like I love her in this army because she's fast, super fast.
She's doing something that the others aren't doing.
Yes, she's super fast. She's good at operating alone. She has actually some pretty decent defenses. I mean, by the standards of Khorne, right? 3-up base save and a shield that gives enemies a -1 to wound her. That's I love negatives to enemy rolls, right? Just on just that is a thing she has. Now it's in the combat phase or whatever, but still, that's pretty fantastic because a lot of things pop off on X to wound, and suddenly that makes that almost impossible usually, right? So that's pretty great. Valkia also has a wonderful -2 rend weapon that makes 6 attacks. You know what I mean? And
if she is the reason why one of the reasons why I include a 240-point Be'lakor in my list and she's doing it for half the cost.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, her rend is great, as you mentioned. Like, there's often there's not a huge amount of rend floating around this army. She's got that beautiful -2 rend. Like, all in all, she's a great package for a very reasonable cost. Yeah. So I dig Valkia.
Now she'll explode against a ranged army, but whatever.
Sure. I mean,
the problem is in the meta, she's fairly weak because of how much shooting there is, particularly mortal wound shooting. And I mean, she'll just get blown off the table. And that's that hurts in the current meta. But
something else that I want to give a shout out to here that goes along with our whole blood secretors are much better now than they were before, and they were already busted. It made me take a second look at Scarbrand. Because his big attack with his Carnage Axe is a melee attack. And that Portal of Skulls buffs all Khorne units, not Mortal Khorne.
Right.
So you're getting 2 bites at the apple for potentially 8 unsavable wounds.
Yep.
And then you can use a Slaughter Priest with the one of the Blood Blessings to do D3 mortal wounds to him and get a tithe point to make him angry and have that Carnage more likely to do Carnage.
Yeah, I mean, he's a pretty, like, he's expensive, but he's a pretty great bomb. Like, because if he just doesn't fight that
he's
first
a good
round,
tool.
Yeah, like round 2, he hits something and just kills it. Like, just kills it. And
so the question is, can they stop him in that time?
Right. Either they bring him down or he blows them up. I mean, and the worst case scenario is that you just plow into him like 1 shy of all of his wounds or something, right? Because then he's definitely incandescent and just going to absolutely just paste. Tom and I had a tournament last year where we got double turned and Scarbrand plowed through like a Vermin Lord, Archaon, and some other character in the span of the back-to-back double turn, because he wasn't 1 wound and so was just automatically incandescent. And so he just like spike, just blew him off the table.
Yep.
Yeah. Scar is an interesting one to me. He really is. I will be honest. I find most of the Bloodthirsters themselves outside of Scarbrand, underwhelming for their points costs. That's what I'll say.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, I really do. Like
I've been thinking about painting some up for my Nurgle summoning army.
Look, as a model, they're freaking awesome. Okay, like I love the look of them. The new model looks great, and in a casual sense, I think they're fine. I think they're useful. When we're looking at like what's the best though, I think in a lot of cases when I look at this Khorne army and I look at like a 300-ish point Bloodthirster, right? Which most of them are in that range.
Yeah,
right?
Like the 280 to 3, whatever.
Yeah. What I look at that and go, well, I could have 3 other, of the heroes we've been talking about for that same price. And those guys are just going to do more. Right. Like another priest seems great, especially with their expanded prayers. You know what I mean? Like it's just that kind of stuff.
But he's going to generate heat. Like, so you can control the battlefield focus with something like him.
I mean, I'm not going to say you're wrong. But what I'll also say is because I'm trying to get blood tithe, I hate forcing too much of my army into 1 point sink because that guy represents like 1 potential blood tithe point, right? Sure. I mean,
where you could have 5 units of 10 Marauders and have, board control. Like you could have board control with those Marauders. You could have free bodies. They're going to battle shock off. They're going to have,
Yeah, exactly. And like ultimately in the end, most of them don't feel damaging enough for how not tough they are, is what I mean, right? Like they're all just basically 14 wound dudes with a 4-up save.
Yeah.
So any kind of concentrated fire and they pretty much just fall over. The advantage to Scarbrand, I mean, he can't fly, which sucks, but is that at least if they take the shot and put heat on him, if they don't finish the job, they're going to pay for that.
Yeah.
Right. Because he's just getting angrier.
And that takes the heat off of the rest of your force.
Right.
Is, I think, pretty significant.
Yeah, if you can control, like, so Vince had talked about how, like, controlling enemy movement. Another aspect of that is controlling enemy fire. If you can control where the enemy is attacking, you could win the game.
Sure. Yeah, I certainly don't disagree that when you get to decide your opponent's target priority and you know what they're going to do, that is advantageous, right? Because you know what's going to live, what's going to be alive, what you can take objectives with, etc.
Yeah.
Sure. No, I don't disagree. Some stuff, it's good to know some stuff is just there to die. It's not a bad thing. All right. Who else is in our best or worst list? Who else is sucking? I'll mention the one since Tom threw it out there.
Okay.
Hold on. I want to rant about this real quick.
Yeah.
Can we talk about how garbage the Blood Throne is and how angry I am about it?
Go ahead, Vince.
I know it's a demons unit, and I guess we've just written off the demons of Khorne, and we're going to pretend like they just aren't important anymore. But Blood Throne sounds like the coolest thing, right? The Blood Throne of Khorne. His little saying literally mentions a throne, right? He talks about it. It's in the thing. It's in the thing they all run around saying. And this stupid model could not be more worthless. What does this do? In what universe? You're grabbing your book right now to look it up because you don't even remember the rules. And I don't blame you because that's fine. Because nobody does.
It's going to be a great hero in Warhammer Skirmish. You know, a Sever Moon hero.
Sure. Finally, the age of the Blood Throne. Yeah, there it is. This thing is just terrible because it doesn't have the cannon like the other build of this does, which even that is arguably not very good outside of like the skull cannon. Yes, is arguably like there's one battalion that involves skull cannons that could be very fun to drive around and shoot them all during the hero phase. But this thing doesn't even have that. It's got a bunch of underwhelming attacks that basically do nothing. And that's it. It doesn't even buff. The Blood Throne of Khorne has no buffs. I mean, it's a Khorne demon hero, and like so certain things like bloodletters have benefits from having bloodletter heroes around, which it certainly counts as that. But that is, you know what else counts as that? Other bloodletter heroes that are cheaper and aren't dumb, worthless thrones that cost more points for nothing. What?
How many points is this thing?
This thing purpose.
Right? 120? Is that right?
Yeah, I believe that's right.
120.
Yeah.
That's
a whopping 24 points in Warhammer Skirmish, baby.
It's not even worth it in Warhammer Skirmish. Like, that's just terrible. This thing does nothing. It's as though it was my biggest letdown in 8th edition. It's still my biggest letdown. I have a massive converted Blood Throne. This is why this particularly stings. That's built like the doof wagon out of Mad Max. Okay. And it doesn't live up to it. It kills me. Why is this such a garbage model? I have a real problem with it. That's all. It should buff something. Make it cost double the points and then do something, and I'm fine with it. Have a buff, do something. In a world of
a war shrine or something.
Sure. In a world of like war altars and war shrines and celestial hurricanums, can we do something? Just anything. Just have a purpose other than being a model that exists.
You know what? It just adds insult to injury is that for 20 points less, you can get a Gorby's chariot that probably has better stats than this.
Yes. You're exactly right. Absolutely. Okay. So that's my worst hero, by the way. That's my pick for worst hero is that stupid Blood Throne.
So I'm going to, I don't know that it can beat that, but I'll say it's going to compete.
Okay. I'm interested.
And that's the Exalted Deathbringer. So the Aspiring Deathbringer, everybody knows. He has attacks. That dude is motivated. He's aspiring. But the Exalted Deathbringer, he's arrived. And so what does he get? He gets the ability to project a 12-inch bubble so that mortal Khorne units use his bravery.
Mm-hmm.
instead of their own. What?
I mean, he's got a bravery of 8. I mean, that's...
What army is not bringing a Bloodsecrator?
Fair point. Yes.
What?
I mean, I guess if you get screamed at by Terrorgeists a lot, I don't know, man. I'm trying to find something. A lot of Banshees in the enemy force. I don't know.
Oh, by the way, and if there's a unit in your army within 1 inch of him, he can inflict a D3 mortal wounds on them and increase the range to 24 inches.
Yeah, super sweet. He can. Yes, I agree. The regular Exalted Deathbringer, at least the other guy has the spear that can interestingly trigger off the like hero death as they slide down the spear, which at least gives him some purpose, like as an anti-hero killer. But the regular Exalted Deathbringer, I find it so very underwhelming.
Well,
I got nothing.
The one thing I will say is that if you're not running him as your general and you're using the Aspiring Deathbringer as your general, he has the ability to get that extra 2 attacks on his weapon. If you take the, the Ruinous Axe, so you're getting base 3 attacks with rend and 2 damage, then you get +2 attacks, +1 from the Aspiring Deathbringer, +1 from the Portal of Skulls, and why the hell not just throw...
I mean, 80 points, right?
Yeah.
I'll bet I can find a better beater than him for 80 points.
Right, and that's perfectly fair. I'm just saying that, like, you can turn him into a beater with the right combination of things.
Yes, I agree. Like, this guy isn't the Blood Throne. Like, keep in mind, this dude goes to, like, in that situation you've described, this dude is at 7 attacks with that axe, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, that's not bad ever. Like, 7 attacks with rend doing multiple damage is not bad, okay? Like, if you're going to put that guy against the Blood Throne, I'm just saying Blood Throne wins. Because
and
it's
then Mark of the Destroyer. Mark of the Destroyer on everything.
Yeah. Like, my argument is this guy he's not first pick, he's not second pick, he's not third pick, he's not fourth, but he's also not terrible. Like, he could find his way into, like, he's a 5th or 6th round draft pick. That's fine. You know, I've got to get my priest in there. I've got to get my Bloodsecrator in there. I've got to get whoever my general is in there, my Aspiring Deathbringer, that kind of stuff, right? It's probably the guy. And something like that. And then maybe I start looking at this guy, right? Because
he's the, like, if you have one more leader slot in your list, maybe it's him.
Yeah, because he is pretty fighting.
Never him. Like,
he's pretty fighting.
For 80 points?
Yeah. For 80 points, you're rocking 7 attacks, right? At a base 4-up, 3-up, -1/2 damage. That's within the situation we've described, right? Like, where you're assumed to have the Aspiring Deathbringer as your general, who's near this guy, and a Bloodsecrator running around, right? So, okay, you know, and he kicks back, mortal wounds, a pretty good one.
Like, if you only have 80 points to spend, maybe. But if you don't, why wouldn't you just add another Slaughter Priest? Like, if you had 20 more, if you could round up 20. Like, I don't know a world where I would ever choose this guy over an additional Slaughter Priest. Like,
if I already have, like, Aspiring Deathbringer, 2 Slaughter Priests, Bloodsecrator, right? Something like... And
you're telling me a 3rd Slaughter Priest with an extra prayer and an extra Blood Boil and an extra pull isn't always the better option?
Yeah, I'm saying that, yes, that dude's pretty fighty, because Slaughter Priests aren't very, like, they're not the super killiest dudes, admittedly.
No, but they can throw around a D6 mortal wounds, something this army is lacking.
Sure. I don't disagree.
And they get additional prayer, and they, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's enough competing in that point space. I just don't know what this dude's doing. I agree, the Blood Throne, it's not competing with anything.
No. It is the worst. It is the worst of the worst. Look, let's agree he's mid-tier at best. Let's talk about the Mighty Lord of Khorne. Can we talk about the Mighty Lord of Khorne for a moment? Okay, Mr. Guy with a dog. Okay. Mister, he brought his puppy to the fight. Okay. What's your feelings on the mighty Lord of Khorne, Paul?
I feel like his command ability is just not that strong.
You're looking at the wrong thing if you're looking at the command ability.
Yeah. It's like he's a combat hero. Like that's kind of a, he can unbind spells, which
still missing the actual reason why you're taking him. He can one-shot Nagash.
He can? Oh, with the
reality splitting axe. Yes. Yeah, I agree. I agree. It's so funny to me that this guy tricks you. This guy's a trap choice, right? Because you take him, his name is the Mighty Lord of Khorne, and you're like, in the original sort of box set, he was the general, right? He's Korgus Call. He feels like he should be the general. And yet he's like, nope. I agree with you. I agree with you, Paul. His command ability is completely underwhelming. Okay. Especially with all the battalion movement shenanigans that these battalions introduced, right? Like we don't need that movement shenanigan anymore.
Right.
Of like the swift stride charge or whatever, which is what he does. But but he has two things going for him that are not command ability related that I love. One, his dog lets him unbind, right? Because his dog's carrying around that brass collar, which I like. More unbinds, especially from a melee guy who's probably at the front of the fight and near the enemy wizards. It's not a bad thing, right? Like, it's always good to have some extra unbinds lying around. Why not? Roll some dice. How many times have you seen Mystic Shields just get off on a 6, right? So you can probably knock that down. But that reality splitting axe, baby, you can't argue with that thing. Just
like if anything is screaming for the doubling of attacks, it's that mighty axe. Holy shit. Like, man, I would do an army with 3 of this guy.
Dude, just like triple. Korgus Call was the triplicates. He came out. I didn't know he had two twin brothers.
I would buff their asses and just send them forward in the waves and just watch them explode some fools. Yeah. I can tell you right now, if I ran an army like this, I would be because these guys are also a 3-up save and 6 wounds. Like, that ain't too shabby. Stick him on a hill, and he's a 2-up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's fairly, like, again, yep, sure. I don't know that you're ever going to be able to really count on cover with this guy, just because he feels like a dude who's probably...
He wants to get in the shit. Like, he's in.
He's, if your enemy happens to be on cover when you get to them, and you didn't, the next round after you didn't charge, sure, then maybe he's getting that bonus, right? But like, I think in general, this dude's probably just engaging the enemy wherever they happen to be.
And to verify, the Sorcerer Lords can't be marked for Khorne, correct?
The regular generic Chaos Sorcerer Lord enslaves to darkness?
Yeah.
Correct.
He cannot.
Correct. Yes. Correct.
That's
the Lord of Chaos, the Chaos Lord on Demonic Mount, all those guys can.
I was just verifying that wizard can't. The reason why is because if he could, he has the automatic reroll 1s to saves. And so this guy would be a free 2-up reroll 1s without a Mystic Shield, like on terrain. And so like they could tank in a like they could hold units. Like one dude could potentially hold units if they needed to, with that kind of buff temporarily. Like I could see him locking down, like in a forest or whatever, if he needed to.
Sure, assuming there's not enough mortal wounds on the other side to pick him up. Yes.
Yeah.
You gotta just realize there's another whole world of suck is the Bloodstoker. With all of the movement shenanigans that you can get in the battalions and all the other shenanigans throughout the army, the sheer number of other leaders that you want to try and shoehorn into your list.
Yep.
Who is running a Bloodstoker anymore?
Well, let me
anybody that wants a bomb, like anybody that wants to put models up there, like
I've always hated.
Let me just say, for the 80-point competitive, like I'm gonna run a Bloodstoker over a
Exalted Deathbringer.
Exalted Deathbringer any day of the week.
Let me try to defend Bloodstoker Poo Poker. Okay. This guy, Fatty McFats, I think, as William Page always called him, like the only guy in the army who didn't hit the gym, apparently. So let me see if I can defend him. His ability to buff, like,
what? Like, do you feel you need to defend him?
Yeah, a little bit. Let me see if I can defend him a little bit. Sure. His ability to buff charge rolls, because he is, interestingly, as somebody in the comments pointed out, and that's what I was just about to go to. So yes, thank you. Excellent. Bjarni pointed that out. That you only get it on the run or charge now, not run and charge, which is interesting. That being said, I think for the most part, I'm still fine with that. You would pick the charge in most cases, probably. And his reroll of, ones to wound or whatever, that's what he's given them. But here's my defense of him. His target is just Khorne units.
Sure.
Right? It's not mortals or slaves to darkness or whatever, right? It's just Khorne. So he's one of those guys that can actually reach across the aisle and make make demons suck less, I guess. That's nice. That's always nice. And also, he's more movement, and movement generally does rule the game. But these are the best defenses I can offer. I do agree that I like him better than the Exalted Deathbringer. I will say that. I'll back you up on that one. I think he's underwhelming, but could be useful in certain cases. That's what I'll say. Reaching farther. All right. So we've gone long, but let's talk about battalions a little bit. We'll actually we'll skip over. We'll come back. We'll leave command abilities and artifacts to the side. There's lots of good ones in there. Actually, let's just real quick. Paul, give me your favorite command ability and artifact out of the pick. I don't want to blow them by completely.
A really interesting combination that I have seen and I'm considering running myself is, because you can use tithe points to activate command abilities. And I know, as we've discussed, like, it drains your tithe points to 0 to do it, and it only costs 1. But it gives you the ability to just activate command abilities that are off your general. So you can, let me find this stuff in the book. You can use the Berserker Lord command trait, which gives your general a 5-up ward save, and make your Blood Secretor your general, and use the Gore Pilgrims battalion. So now you've got him generating a 30-inch bubble of +1 attack and immune to battle shock and all that nonsense that he does. And he's going to be sitting on naturally a 3-up save with a 5-up ward save.
All right. Yeah, there's not a tremendous amount of like true sort of, the ward saves type damage prevention saves floating around in Khorne, other than against spells, right? Yeah. Like, there's plenty of anti-spell technology when you save. Like, there's lots of ways to prevent the mortal wounds from spells. The problem is against things like Skyfires or stuff like that are generating mortal wounds in the shooting phase or in the melee phase and combat phase. You just don't have a lot. So yeah, okay, I can dig that. Anything else jump out at you? We mentioned obviously the double attacks artifact or become a chaos spawn. That's always a fun one.
Yeah,
Tom,
was the destroyer.
Yes, was there any that you particularly loved, Tom?
I mean, again, and like I mentioned it, but the Brazen Rune. I mean, the Brazen Rune has me reworking a list because it can shut me down before I start. Like any item that can do that is good in my book. You know, if you can shut down an entire play style with a single item, that's worth taking.
All right. So, yep. No, it's good. I agree. I like Khorne's entire ability. Like, I think my favorite item off the Blood Tithe list is the two Blood Tithe ability to just sort of auto dispel at any range. Because often there's like one spell that you don't want to go off, you want to kill, and just being able to say no is always powerful, right? When you can just be like, nope, you don't get that. Sorry. You know, counter spells are powerful. Always have been, always will be. All right. So then let's move into battalions. We've been touching battalions throughout this whole show. Obviously, we mentioned Gore Pilgrims, which again is one of my standouts for sure. We mentioned the Brass Stampede, which I am highly, what do I want to say? Like, I have a soft spot in my heart for the Brass Stampede, mainly because, like you, Paul, I've also got a bunch of Skull Crushers, and so I dig it. I can't lie. I've always I don't know what it is about those dumb angular dogs that I've always liked. The stupid metal dogs. I've just always thought they were fun. But is there any other battalions that either of you gentlemen would like to bring up, or any that you think are just total garbage, just hot Chinatown garbage?
I've been repping for a long time the Skull Take Battalion.
Okay.
And I stand by it. Even though it does include that Bloodstoker that you guys hate.
Again, I don't hate him. Sure. If Khorne has any problem, it's just that I think, Paul, it's one of the things you mentioned in your video is that you're always going to be pushing your leader section, right? Like, you're going to run into the cap on leaders in the 4-sword chart pretty fast because there's a lot of things you want to include in there. So
okay. Yeah. So the Skull Take is it is using both Skull Reapers and Korgoraths, and both of those are models that I don't think we see as much on the table. Remember, we talked about Skull Reapers and being able to kick out mortal wounds.
Yes.
And what these do is that if they're within 12 inches of their Bloodstoker, if they roll a wound roll of 6 or higher, they add 1 to the damage characteristic of their weapon.
Okay.
So they're kicking out mortal wounds on high hits. On high wounds, they're increasing the wound output of their actual weapons themselves.
Okay.
And then if they contains the maximum number of units at the start of the battle, which is not hard to do.
What does that actually equate to?
1 Bloodstoker, 3 Skull Reapers, 3 units of Skull Reapers, 2 Korgoraths, or 2 units of Korgoraths, and 2 units of either Blood Warriors or Blood Reavers, which are battle line.
Okay, so it fits. It's big, like, no doubt about it. Hitting max is not like there ain't a lot of room left in there on 2,000 points. But okay,
but that ability of +1 damage, applies to all units on the wound roll.
Okay, gotcha.
So that's pretty good.
Yeah.
And then in addition to that, for each skull, the Skull Reapers take as a trophy, dozens are left for the Korgoraths to devour. The Skull Take, Korgoraths in this unit make 8 attacks with their claws instead of 5, as long as they're within 6 inches of a Skull Skull Reaper unit. So,
I mean, that does change the math quite a bit. Like 3 extra attacks that's not nothing to.
Yeah, so they're base 8, and then they gain all the bonus Khorne attacks.
Right, sure.
And remember, Korgoraths can be taken in up to units of 5.
Yes.
And so you could have and they have a pretty small frontage on that narrow edge of the. So you could get 40 attacks off of 5 of those dudes.
Yeah, because they're on the big. They're on the bigger Varangard cavalry base, but they're kind of you can put it at a weird angle.
Point. Yes, and so these guys that Korgorath unit is self-healing, and it's just it'd be really good. And then increased damage obviously on rolls of 6 or more.
Sure.
To wound on 40 attacks.
It's a lot of attacks.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the Skull Take Battalion. If I made one of these, this is probably what I would do.
Yeah, it really raises the question. We've kind of danced around it a few times, but I do want to mention it. why, oh, why have they not released the Korgorath as a standalone kit yet?
I don't know.
It's one of those mysteries of the universe I just do not understand. Like, it just feels like so obvious to me. Yeah. Like, it's such a weird choice. Because, like, it clearly they could just bust it out and put it in a box. I don't get it. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe the Korgorath mold was lost.
Well, they would ask, like, why not on the Bloodstokers? Like,
sure.
Like, Bloodstokers really popular.
The Flesh Hounds are another one, sure. But, like, just the Korgorath is one of those things that, like, he's such a unique monster, right? Like, because the reality is I can convert my own insert random Khorne hero here without much work from basically any Khorne hero, right? Like, how many Khorne hero conversions do you see out of the free Slaughter Priest with Hackblade, right? Sure. Who could just be an aspiring Deathbringer, an exalted Deathbringer, the priest, these guys, they're almost interchangeable, right?
Yep.
But, like, I can't take just some random dude and make him a Korgorath. Like, that takes some more work. So I'm just saying. I value the uniqueness of the model. That's what makes me want to see it released more than anything.
Sure.
Paul, and what about you?
And not have to do all those dumb poses. Like a bunch of Korgoraths in a single pose.
Right. What about you? Any other battalions standing out for you there, Paul, that you want to touch on? Good or bad?
I would say it's disappointing because you can really only run it in either a casual game or a 2,500 point game. But the Gore Chosen battalion, that's just 8 heroes that just adds 1 to the attacks characteristic of all of their melee weapons. Like that just hits me right in the Khorne feels. Sure. Like that just feels right to run that battalion if you are able to for whatever reason. The other interesting one is the Red Headsman, because there's a little ability on the Skull Grinder that I think everybody kind of overlooks, that like when he kills, I believe, an enemy hero, like everything, all of your dudes within, I think, 8 inches get +1 attack for the rest of the game. And the Red Headsman, when you activate that ability, it does that to all of the guys in your battalion, regardless of where they are on the field.
That's pretty good.
The downside is that you have to choose worthy foes on your opponent's side of the table, and they get to re-roll stuff. So you're buffing your opponent's units in the process.
That could be a problem.
Yeah, it could. It definitely could be a problem. I feel like this would be a really fun, fluffy one to take. I don't think I would ever take this competitively, but it's I don't know. It's interesting.
Sure. Yeah, the ability you're talking about on the Skull Grinder guy is if he kills a hero or a monster, right?
Yeah.
It's a crazy ability too, like, because if he kills a hero or monster, which, as we've described, if you're going for like the mega crazy dude who's swinging that thing around 9 times, you're going to make paste out of more or less any hero you run up against. You got to be really careful with monsters. Any like standard 5 wounder. Then what happens is all mortal Khorne units within 8 inches, okay, get an ability where if the hit roll that they make is a 4 or higher, so again, bonus by all the stuff that would add to hits, right, that we've talked about already, then when that happens, they make 2 wound rolls for every hit rather than 1, which is pretty crazy when combined with some of the other things out there we've discussed, right? Yeah. It's like you've got to kind of set it up, and people are going to see it coming and try to let you not assassinate their heroes with your psycho Skull Grinder. But God forbid it does happen, because those other units near them, especially like if you've got Skull Reapers or something like that near them, holy hell! Like, does that just become a mess real fast? Yeah, it's tough. Like now you're getting into the point where you're trying to set something up with the Skull Grinder that's just like, okay, I'll get him up to 9 attacks. Now I got to get the hero, move over there, get into combat with him, have other units close within 8, whack that dude first. They then go explosive. You know, like, yeah, it could happen. I just wouldn't exactly bank my whole strategy on it, right? But man, the time it does, is it going to be amazing?
Exactly. Like that is the one where, you know, you've got, you know, some beverages you're enjoying with your friends in your basement and you just want to have a fun game and you just have your skull grinder go full blood for the blood god.
Yeah, absolutely. Bring him down or he's going to turn everything near him into a psycho killer. So, you know, nothing wrong with that. All right. Was there any closing thoughts we wanted to share on that? We've rambled for 2 hours about Khorne, more or less. Is there anything else we wanted to share on the Blades of Khorne before we leave the Blood God behind?
No, I mean, I think what I would say is that this book was well designed.
Yes.
It did exactly what it should do. It increased interest in a set of static armies that really hadn't had any recent updates, like in the last year. It let them do more of what they're already doing without unbalancing them or giving them tools that they shouldn't have. And it's overall, I mean, I think it was a huge win from GW.
Yes. The thing that I would add for sure is don't forget all of those Slaves to Darkness units that can also benefit from all of these. Or I'm not going to say all, but from a multitude of the abilities in this book. You know, your demon princes seem like they might be really interesting combat heroes.
Yeah.
You know, there's a variety of other units that seem really interesting. Chaos Marauder Horsemen, you know, those make for really interesting baity chaff units now. And you care even less that they die because you get tithe points.
That's right. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, the Demon Prince thing is interesting, especially if he gets juiced up with, you know, like an artifact or something, right? Because of your battalions, which, as we mentioned, is a pretty easy thing to have several floating around. So yeah, you can really turn that guy into a pretty significant little fighter. Yes. Yeah, and I dig that. And again, the regular Demon Prince isn't so off the charts on points that it's that you're over investing. He's kind of in that sweet spot for me. He's kind of at the max. Yeah,
he's fair.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think my feeling on this army and on this book was I love everything this book did. It made the army do what it wanted to do in a more fun and dynamic way. It gave them more options without suddenly just having them play in other parts of the game that they weren't traditionally in. Like, it didn't suddenly to help empower the army. And I don't mean like, I mean that in the true sense of the word. Mm-hmm. It didn't just be like, now you have a bunch of shooting, right? And now you have spellcasters, right? It didn't do those things that would be not corny, as it were, right? It stayed in its lanes and yet made the army play more dynamically without being overtly powerful. Every time I hear somebody say, oh, it's power creep, every book is just power creep, I'm like, people get real choosy with their examples then, right? They're like, oh, this is just power creep. Well, this book. Well, not this one. This one wasn't fine. And that's just it. I would point at this book. There's nothing overtly broken about this book. It's fun. It's interesting. It's competitive. It is not more powerful than everything that came before it. That's nonsense, right? It just took exactly what you said, Tom. A lot of troops that were maybe underwhelmed, that hadn't been underwhelming, some that hadn't been used in a while, gave them a lot of new interesting ways to play. Brought them back to the scene. Yep, exactly. All right. Well, I think that sums up everything we've got. You know, blood for the blood god, skulls for the throne of Khorne.
Oh, just for clarity's sake, blood skater banners don't stack.
Oh yeah,
I'm going to drop that. I'm going to drop that mic. We're going to drop that bomb here. Like, they don't stack, guys. Like,
Does anybody still think they do?
Like, people were arguing about it just today on Facebook this morning.
Oh wow. Huh.
But you know what? When the bubble is 30 inches, it doesn't matter.
Right. Like, it's in fact, do you have it or don't you? If you do, this is what you get. Having multiple ones with effects doesn't change what the effect gives, which is +1 attack. And we've had a number of personalities who are part of the playtesting allude to the language change was intending this. And I can assure you that you will probably see that in an FAQ update the next time one of those drops. Guys, it doesn't stack. I know you want it to. I know we probably just got a bunch of downvotes because of this.
Well, way to save it for the end, Tom.
It doesn't stack.
Yeah,
okay.
At least we're not getting demonetized because of it.
Yeah.
It's controversial subject matter. Yes, I didn't even know that was still controversial. I just assumed that was the case. But hey, there you go.
It is
interesting times.
And yeah.
You see the frustration I saved myself, Tom, by not reading forums. That's why you shouldn't read forums. Or at least not rules argument forums.
It is the number one most popular conversation on TGA right now is, does Blood Skaters stack?
Wow.
That is a true statement.
Neat. Well, there you go. Hey, interesting thing to end the show on. So I will say thank you very much, Paul. Appreciate you coming back, brother. Look forward to your continued series. Paul's channel will be linked down below. Go check it out. Sub up, as well as everything else we talked about in the pick of the week. And as for everybody else, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next Wednesday.